I hope you had opportunities to discover stories, meet creators, and be inspired. Who is here at CXC for the first time this year? Raise your hands. Oh my, what? Thank you. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it, appreciate it. So, CXC brings the global family of cartoon storytellers, comic makers, and animators together with the people who love and are inspired by cartoon art and connects them right here in Columbus, Ohio. So, thank you for coming. We really appreciate that. We'd like to thank our partner, first, the Wexner Center for the Arts for having us. We appreciate you hosting us. And we also want to thank our CXC 2022 partner. It's AAEC, the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists, for sponsoring our guests tonight. We appreciate them. Can we give them a round of applause? Excellent. So we'd also like to thank our sponsors. Their support ensures that CXC remains admission-free to attend over 55 hours of creator-driven programming, and what we have going on Saturday and Sunday, an expo with 100+ artists. So I hope you'll come out and support. We want to thank the Greater Columbus Arts Council, White Castle, UBS, Ohio Arts Council, and Go Comics. Thank you so much for your support. So James Spooner is an accomplished tattoo artist, illustrator, and filmmaker. He directed the seminal documentary Afro-Punk. Spooner is also the co-founder of the Afro-Punk Festival. His debut graphic novel, The High Desert, is out now, and he'll have copies available after the event, and he'll also be at the expo tomorrow. So I want to give it to James. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. So thanks for having me. This is my first time being here as well. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Great. I don't see a mic or anything. So, yeah, so I'm really privileged to be able to share the stage with Keith Knight. I'm sure everyone here knows who he is because you probably don't know who I am. So, so I'm just going to read you a little thing here. Keith is now an honorary PhD from his alma mater, is a prolific cartoonist whose life has who inspired the live-action series Woke that we just saw here. His work has appeared in Mad Magazine, Washington Post, New Yorker, and just everywhere, dozens of things. You know, he talks at colleges, hire him, you know, that kind of thing. He's got tons of awards, including Master Cartoonist, which he just won a couple minutes ago. On top of that, he's got the Glyph Award, the Harvey Kurtzman Award, and Best Syndicated Comic Strip, the Ink Pot Award. I mean, it really goes on. He's like a rad dude, that's why we're here. So let's just bring him out. Dr. Keith Knight. So question, how do we want to do, oh, clicker.
I think I want to sit here so I can see what's happening. Hi, everybody. Hello. It's very nice to see most of your faces, and just happy to be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, first of all, for just, Keith was asked, who do you want to talk to, or have you ask the damn questions? And you said me, which was a pleasant surprise. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, listen, we were just talking about this. It's amazing what you've managed to. You always say, how long have you been in the business for?
Well, my book came out in May, so I've been a cartoonist for exactly since then.
Been a cartoonist since May, but I'm blown away by sort of how you've managed to just like really barnstorm the whole country and promote your book in a way that, you know, most cartoonists wish they could, you know, and it's really inspiring to me. But just the idea that you know, your work, the original Afro-Punk documentary, was seminal, and sort of me and finding my voice and just seeing that documentary years ago. It's just it's just a lovely thing to know, that our paths would eventually cross. And,
Yeah, it's really cool to just, like, it's interesting. I find that, like, I feel like art today, it's like you don't have to just do one thing, right?
Totally.
And there's avenues for us to bridge a lot of gaps, and there's no shortage of TV shows that are out now that started out as a comic.
Yeah.
I think in the back of every comic creator's head, they're like, oh, what would it be like as a show?
Yeah.
And because the comics community is so small, grassroots, like DIY, it really is like, oh, that's a tangible thing. Like, I know that guy has a show, which, we may not have been able to say 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And it's again, you just starting out in comics and me just starting out in sort of television. We were just saying, we are crossing roads. This is a crossroads for us, and I think it's really cool that we do it here.
Yeah, it totally works out.
And that you lived here once, which is really kind of.
I did live here for like 8 months in '96.
Wow,
There was still snow in May, and I was like, I'm out.
Excellent.
Like, did I just step in snow? It's May. So yeah.
Excellent.
So let's talk about you. Let's start in the beginning. You have been cartooning forever.
Yes, I have.
So a lot of people, draw in, I don't know, high school. Tell us just a bit of your beginnings. What was the first thing that you were like, this is a comic that I made?
Well, everyone's looking at the little baby picture of me and my twin sister, and my parents told me I used to draw on the walls in our apartment when we were real small, and I remember drawing dinosaurs in kindergarten, and the teachers holding up, saying, "Oh, look at this, look at this." But as far as like a tangible comic, I just recently did a comic about it. I used to have my own little version of Mad Magazine. And
Didn't we all?
Yeah. And,
or at least dream of it?
I called it Kooky Magazine.
Amazing.
And had 2 Ks in it. And but I didn't have a copy machine to run off copies.
Yeah.
So I would redraw the same issue over and over again and sell it, which is pretty insane.
Totally.
But you just that's comics, right? You do it one way until you figure out another way.
A better way.
And but I was born in Boston, just north of Boston, Malden, Massachusetts, home to Killer Kowalski's wrestling school, and also the guy from Chico and the Man, the old man from Chico and the Man. Yeah. But he was also the uncle in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Okay, so that's the town's claim to fame.
Yes, that is the town's claim to fame. Until I was born.
Yeah.
Now, but this is me on the slopes of New Hampshire with my great uncle Owen. Like Luke Skywalker, I had an amazing Uncle Owen. Oh, well, actually, the Uncle Owen wasn't that amazing in Star Wars, right? But my Uncle Owen was amazing, a great uncle who took me and my sister to plays and like art exhibits at museums. He took us to New York City when we were really small, and we were part of like one of the few black ski clubs in Boston, and it was just an amazing sort of experience. And he used to tell all these great stories. He was an artist, a painter, but he couldn't get into mass art because he was black, and so he decided to go to Paris and just study art there. And so he went. He was his goal was to go there for like 3 years. And he went there, and he came back in 6 months.
Oh, wow.
With no money, lost like all this weight, was completely skinny, and he told the story was he went to Paris, and he was staying in this apartment building, and he said there were the most beautiful women there, and there was a bar downstairs, and it turned out to be a brothel. And he was in the bar, and there was this fight that broke out next to him between two people, and someone pulled out a knife and went to stab the guy and stabbed my uncle instead. So my uncle came home, stabbed, lost like 30 pounds, and broke after like 6 months. And he would sit there and go, those were the best times of my life. And it was like I want to tell stories like that. Like that was. I come from a great line of just family of storytellers, and I just felt like that was it. Like that's what I want to do. And you know, this is the most famous picture from when I was growing up of Boston, and you know, Boston has a very interesting, you know, reputation, and you know, this really fits it. And I used to, you know, I knew it was about busing, but I didn't know a whole lot about it. But I use this in my slideshow to sort of, just to point out, like, this, you know, I would see this picture and not know much about it. And then I eventually return to it with the knowledge of what it's all about. This is some of my earliest cartooning, my earliest strip work. And this was just about hamburgers and coming to life. And yeah, 1982. And,
How old were you here?
I was in high school. I should have been drawing better than that. And
I was going to compliment your lettering.
oh well, yeah. You know, I think I lettered better then than I do now. But yeah, that's the earliest thing I could find. But
Okay.
then this turned up. This was this was the earliest autobiographical work that I would do. I would do these comics about me and my buddies. And here's what I realized. I talk about this all the time. I never got any books where the protagonists were black. I got more books where the protagonists were animals than were people of color.
Totally.
And so I think these comics that I made where me and my friends were all the lead characters was me trying to have a narrative.
This is like your Fat Albert.
Yeah, exactly. So, so there's another really interesting story behind that, but we'll go forward. But the first black teacher I ever had was not till I was a junior in college.
Wow.
And so this black teacher was an American literature teacher, and he gave us Ralph Ellison, Richard Wright, Maya Angelou, and James Baldwin. Mm-hmm. And when someone said, you know, why are you giving us all black writers? He said, I'm giving you all American writers. And that's where my work changed. That was like...
You went from hamburgers to black people.
No, I went from keg parties
Okay.
to, you know, comics about keg parties to comics about what it's like.
I think I read something about like that there was like a shift in your audience. Like, wait, I thought you do all the party comics.
Well, it to me, like, if there is a woke moment in my life, it's that was that moment. Reading these authors who are basically talking about the same things that we were going through, you know, sometimes 50, 70 years later, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I had a experience while I was making Afro-Punk. So this was in 2003. I was finishing up the edit of my film, and I was in a public, like, it wasn't like public, but I was like not at my house doing it. I was doing it at a space where there were other people walking by or whatever. And I felt this presence behind me just like watching the particular sequence, you know? And then I heard, I turned around and I saw this woman there, and she's like, damn, are we still talking about this shit? And it was Kathleen Cleaver. Mm. And so, I mean, I'm just like, holy shit, like, we're in 2003, she's talking about, like, the 60s, and we're still talking about this, you know?
It's crazy. I did a presentation in Chicago, and it was all college students, but there were these two older women, elderly women, like right in the middle of the audience. And they came up to me after, and they said, 50 years ago, we sat in those same seats and listened to, and it was someone who was huge at the time, come through and speak exactly to what you're speaking about. And we do not teach that all the issues that are happening today have been happening forever, and there's nothing new. There's nothing new. I talk about the migrants that were sent up to Massachusetts in the early '60s. Southern segregationists told 250 black people, gave them brochures saying, "We're going to bus you up to Massachusetts. You're going to have jobs up there. You're going to be greeted by President Kennedy." All that. The exact same thing. And most people don't know that. Most people don't know that. All the book banning that's going on, we don't want to make white people feel uncomfortable. That after the Civil War, Reconstruction, Southern women joined the school board saying, we can't teach the Civil War, that the Civil War is about slavery. All that different stuff. Like, it's the same thing. And we're destined to repeat the same things over and over if we don't learn from them.
Yeah. So when did your hobby cartooning turn into, what was your first paid gig?
Well, interesting enough, I had roommates in college that said, you should start charging now. I started doing posters for some of the clubs on campus. I was obviously doing comics for the school newspaper, but I was also drawing caricatures in Faneuil Hall in Boston.
What is that?
Caricatures?
No, Faneuil Hall.
Faneuil Hall. Faneuil Hall is like, it's like this old school marketplace in Boston that like in its
like
heyday,
you were one of those people who just like
sat at a cart and did the drawing, and I was a terrible caricaturist. and I'm a terrible portrait person, but I've somehow come to some sort of mix of
you know who that is?
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know what it is, but when I see it and I feel like, oh, that's it, I feel, satisfied. There's plenty of stuff I've done where I don't put out. No one's seen the light of day, but I've gotten to this point where, I just felt really comfortable. Like, when people inspire me, I love doing their portraits. And the first one I did was Gil Scott Heron, and I remember drawing it in my notebook, and I was like, oh my goodness, this looks just like him, in a very cartoony way.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't. It's not a comic, but I'm just going to put it out anyway. And you just never. As cartoonists, we always try to come up with like tropes to return to. That's what Life's Little Victories is to me, and it's like Charles Schultz kicking the football and stuff like that. Not Charles Schultz, but kicking the football,
I know what you're talking about.
and all that's the tropes that you return to. And so the portraiture is some of the stuff I return to.
And I noticed that in your new book, it's like all your political stuff, a lot of Trump stuff, and then it's just like almost like breathing room to just have like a portrait of somebody who matters.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, okay, I've seen like.
I definitely like celebrate, and I felt bad just doing people who have passed, so I started making an effort to do people that are still around now. So that was important, but really, it didn't really take off till I moved to San Francisco.
Okay.
And so this is the very first comic that I got paid for in San Francisco. And this was a review of a Beastie Boys show at an old club called the I-Beam. And I just remember standing in the bathroom, and there was a guy, I was at the urinal, and there was a guy outside the window on the second floor, hanging outside the window. And this was like 2 floors up. And he's like, can you open this, like unscrew this window so I can climb in? I'm like, no, dude, I'm not gonna do that.
This handy screwdriver I have.
Yeah. But people really responded to it, and just thought it was really wacky.
What'd you get paid for this? Do you remember?
Probably the same that I get paid today. Isn't that completely sad? Like, it truly is. Like, we literally get, I think I got paid like maybe $25 for it.
Wow.
And literally, I'll get, someone will reach out to me and go, hey, we could only pay $25 a week to run this thing. And it's the fewer newspapers I've been in, the more successful I've been, which is really weird. But yeah, so it sort of went from, I moved to San Francisco in 1990, and this is the first one that I got paid, 1992. And then, this is one of the more popular ones. This is a very popular print. This is like Black People Bingo. And these were microaggressions before the name microaggressions. And so, yeah, that one.
So when did it become a job?
It's never been a job until 2008. And so when I launched the Daily, that was the job. For years, I had been asked to do a daily. And I was in a band at the time. This is the SF Weekly was the first regular weekly gig I got, and that was a cover I did for them. And I was in a band called the Marginal Prophets for many years, and our tagline was "Black and Jewish relations have hit an all-time low." And so we were a nerdcore rap band before it was called nerdcore, but I didn't know it was nerdcore until. There's a big nerdcore guy, MC Lars, came up to me at a Comic-Con and said, "You guys are like the granddads of nerdcore." I was like,
thanks.
"Oh, really?" But it was great. I mean, we played. I played naked at the Fillmore. And it was for a children's charity. It was very interesting. It was this thing called Live Nude Bands. The Bay Guardian would have it every year, and so every band that joined it was like, okay, we're gonna get naked. But the thing is, they would have a spelling bee, they would have a tug of war, they'd have all these contests, and if you lost, you had to play naked. But everyone wanted to play naked anyway, and there was always this older gentleman that would, whenever there was an excuse to get naked, he would be naked. So he was just walking around the Fillmore naked. And I just remember having a towel on, because I was the last one in my band to get naked. And these two women were yanking at my towel on stage. And I realized, here I am at the Fillmore, on stage, spotlights on me. These ladies are trying to rip my towel off. And I realized, my life was peaking right there. That was it.
Yeah, because you told me the story about how you used to have your sister or your friends, you'd come to the show with a bag of underwear.
Oh, she's in the audience. She just told me about it. She said, and I swear I don't remember any of this, but I would give her a bag of underwear, and I said, throw the underwear on stage, when everyone's clapping. And it sounds like me, but I don't remember any of it. And
So when you're telling this story, then you go to the part about the girls pulling on your towel, and it's like, yo, I manifested this.
There you go. That makes sense. That all makes sense. But so in 2000 or 1999, I launched the single panel Think. Chronicles was my multi-panel autobiographical. Okay. Think was complete opposite. It was single panel. It was from the news, and I never realized this until very recently, but. The Think logo kind of looks like Snoopy, like late Schultz Snoopy. The dot in the eye is the eye, and the parentheses are the ear. There's something, I couldn't draw Snoopy that well, and as the Think logo. But this is the very first one I did, Denny's Serving Blacks since 1997. Signs told the truth. Just really quickly, your sister had the baby, it's a boy. The exact moment radical black activist Thomas X realized that, yes, indeed, he was an Uncle Tom. What was promised, 40 acres and a mule. What was got, 40 ounces in a pit bull. This just in, police have just released a description of the alleged gunman who's terrorizing the downtown area. Please don't let it be a black guy. Please don't let it be a Middle Eastern guy. Ha, they'll never catch me. The power of white privilege. So this is what I realized, like when I started doing my slideshows, and the reason why I started doing the slideshows is I saw the writing on the wall that like no one under 40 was reading newspapers. So it was like, how can I get my comics in front of younger people? So I started doing these slideshows at schools,
Okay.
at universities, and it was Dave Eggers who said, you know, you should break your comics up into panels, or like break them up and drop things. Like you know, it's like this crude animation almost, and it really sort of transformed my presentations, and almost like you could let people laugh at something and then let it roll and then
No, it
keep
totally
on going.
works.
Yeah.
So this is where the career cartoonist came in.
I think so. I think this is where I felt like.
Because how many people here are career cartoonists? Career? All right.
No, yeah.
How many want to be career cartoonists?
Well, and here's, you know, the advice I would give people is like, and I don't know how to say this without, you know, but young people know this. You got to give up on newspapers. You got to give up on newspapers because newspapers gave up on us. Like every survey, people say that they go to the comics first, and yet the comics are the first thing that gets shrunk, that gets dropped. They don't respect us. We shouldn't respect them.
So what is the avenue?
I would say the avenue is multimedia. The avenue is using, obviously using the internet, but using just going into galleries, using your stuff in different ways, using it to combat, race issues and use it at protests. Every small town is looking for artwork to slap up on the sides of buses. I know a few people who've had their stuff in like bus shelters, and I do this sort of creator session where I talk about all this stuff. There are grants available to cartoonists, well, to all artists, but we just never think as cartoonists, oh, I'll go for a grant, There are just a ton of opportunities, and I just, as someone who's never had like a strong presence. I mean, I was in about 30 newspapers, and then when I launched my daily, I was in like 40 newspapers, but never enough to make a living.
Okay.
And that living came from doing the slideshow presentations. That living came from
So universities.
Universities, libraries. I'm doing a church next month in Berkeley, which excites me to no end because not like I want to be in front of young people, but I also want to be in front of older people. And I think I did one church before, and it was great. It was really cool. I'm just going to flick ahead so we don't. Oh, the penis monologues with Wilt Chamberlain, Jimi Hendrix, and Milton Berle. How was it? Way too long. Okay. So I do this whole thing on America's racial illiteracy and how like people are just like, why is everybody talking about race now? It's always been about race, and there's no subject that anyone can talk about where there's not some racist component to it.
In this country, for sure.
Yeah, and it's crazy, like just how deep it goes. But this country's done a really good job at burying it, and so when I talk to people about it, I say this: the history that we get is like McDonald's, McDonald's or Subway. Like there's a Subway everywhere. There's a McDonald's everywhere. Like these fairy tales about Christopher Columbus and pilgrims and stuff are just, it's like the pop music. You can hear the same song over and over again. But the good music and the good food and the good history, you have to search for it. Like, you have to dig in the crates for it.
And it sticks with you.
Yeah, and it sticks with you, and it's the healthiest stuff. And it's just like, everybody knows if you want to find good music, you got to turn to down the dial and look for the obscure college radio station or something like that. And so that's what I urge people to do. It's the same thing with, I think, comics. Like, the harder it is to find cartoons, like, you just have to search for them, and you have to make the effort. It's not going to be just given to us. And this career is not going to be just given to us either.
One thing I was wondering if your move so you were in the Bay, and then you moved to North Carolina.
No, I moved down to LA.
Oh, okay.
So what happened was, like, really the writing was on the wall. I saw it with the band. We went from playing with really cool bands to playing with bad 70s cover bands. And they were just 70s cover bands being hired to play at tech company things. And we were like, this is not good. And then, I was losing all these newspapers, and I just, like I said to my wife, I was like, okay, like, we're in this really cool rent control apartment, but I don't want to stay here just because the rent's cheap, Like, I don't think I'm going to have a career in like 5 years, so, like, we got to move down to LA and see if I can get a show, So we gave up our...
And by show, were you talking about
TV
trying
show.
to get a TV show back?
Yeah.
When was this?
2008.
Okay.
So we left...
During the crash.
During the... and that's when I launched The Daily.
Yeah.
I launched The Daily in 2008, the worst year of the newspaper industry. And, like, literally, this is one of the Nightlife collections. It's called The Nightlife. And it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. Like, but for what it's worth, like, it was a bucket list thing. There were, I think, 4 bucket list things for me as a cartoonist, and I think a lot of cartoonists my age, which is get in Mad, which I had gotten in, get in the New Yorker, have a daily, and then have a Christmas special. So those are the 4 things I wanted to do. So the daily was a bucket list thing, even though it was completely useless. But I will credit the daily for getting me the show. Because even if it's a shadow of what it once was, there's still cachet and the idea of, oh, you're one of the few people who have a syndicated comic strip.
Sure.
And I think me doing the 9 deadlines for 11 years said to Hollywood, oh, this guy can produce. He can produce, like, content. And that's all they're looking for is intellectual property, like content. And
So tell that story about when... let's just skip up to Woke.
Okay.
So you're pitching Woke.
Skip.
And I'm sorry if I'm
skip,
missing
skip.
some good stuff here. But I wanted to ask that question about, I heard the story of you
Okay, we'll look at that one for a moment.
trying to pitch Woke and just being like, here's your first 10 seasons.
Yeah. So, and it's great because as I was walking in, this guy had a picture of, had one of my book, my 500-page collection. So yeah, how I pitched Woke, and here's what Hollywood does to you. They try to make you feel small when you go into a studio. So there's always a hallway with all their hits. Like, so they have posters of, Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones, and they're huge posters. And it makes you feel smaller as you're going in and going, I'm not worthy. So what I would do is in the parking lot of the studio, I would have my Honda Fit, and I had all my awards. And I would pull out my awards and stick them on the dashboard of my car and psych myself up going,
You got this.
no, not even you got this. It's like they need you. Like they can't do what you do. They need you. You create stuff. They're just looking for, and what you do is completely unique and blah, blah, blah. So you just psych yourself up. So when you're going in there, they'll still make you smaller, but you're so big going in, you're just like regular size, like when you get into there. So here's the other thing, which goes back to the panty thing, which is, who's the guy who came in with the complete K Chronicles? Is he here? Do you have it? Oh, there it is, the complete K Chronicles. So there was this trend in the early 2000s, I think, to collect all your stuff in a big, gigantic phone book size collection, which is completely not practical at all. So Dark Horse collected that. And then when I tried to sell it, like, I had no room for any of them. It cost so much to send it in the mail that I was like, I will never have these again. They just exist. But then I was like, oh man, wait a second, I can use this in the pitch. So I ordered 10 of them, and when we went to all the top things. You basically go to the top places first. So we went to Netflix, Amazon, HBO, Showtime, Hulu, and one other thing. And then if that doesn't work, you go to the next tier, and then the next tier, and then the next tier, and then CW. And so I went in there, and basically, I tell them the stories, and that got my producers on board and all this stuff. But then at the end, I basically stand up, I reach into my bag, and I pull out that 500-page book, and I chuck it up in the air, and it slams on the table, and I go, there's your first 10 seasons, and I walk out. And when we were shooting season 1 of the show up in Vancouver, one Hulu executive who was a little tipsy said, do you know when you sold that show? Is when you whipped that book out and chucked it up in the air and it slammed on the table. So a little
drama. Yeah,
a little drama, a little theatrics go a long way. Hence the panties thing. And I'm glad that it's 5 years from now, I won't even remember the book thing. I'll be like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah. But maybe you can have somebody throw panties at your next board meeting.
There you go. There you go. Before this, I in 2015, I think, I put together, because it was during Ferguson, I got just super frustrated because everybody was saying, oh, why is all this police brutality happening now? Like, why now? And, and it's just like, oh my God, it's been going on forever. Yeah. I've been doing comics about it. I had this incident with the police that happened to me. That's the basis of Woke. It happened to me in 1999, and so I put together this slideshow about it, and just trying to explain to people that this has been gone on forever. And what I found from that slideshow is most people, and again, this goes back to us not teaching anything, don't know the history of police and how police came out of slave patrols. Like, they were poor whites hired to keep the black population in check and to chase runaway slaves down and stuff like that. So they got deputized, and it went from there. So what police are doing now is no different than what they did, 150 years ago. So the new slideshow I put together was just about just quick thing about history and why we're in the place that we're in. And so the problem is black history is American history, and the fact that it's not just about teaching black people their history. White people need to know the history of all people in this country, because what happens is, white people get this superiority complex that if they didn't do it themselves, they think aliens did it. So I've heard it with the pyramids that, oh no, these were done by aliens, and so.
Amazing.
If we just trace back, like what Colin Kaepernick did is what Muhammad Ali did back in the day. And Muhammad Ali was, everyone just thinks of him as this beloved, people hated him back in the day because of what he did and changing his name and doing all that stuff. And if we know our history, we'll be hopefully destined not to repeat all the bad shit that has gone down. So in my slideshow, I always return to this and say, so this was about busing. This was about black people being bused to white schools because the black schools weren't funded the same way as white schools. I truly believe that all schools should be funded equally, but I would say equitably in the sense that the black schools need way more money to get it up to speed.
Up to speed, yeah.
This
Have you
guy-
seen?
Oh.
Have you seen the photo from? It was a Klan rally in Orange County from maybe 4 years ago, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like this this Klan, like one of the white power guys, with the flag, stabbing this like Mexican punk rocker.
It's,
I'll get you the
I think
photo.
it's an amazing metaphor that this country uses its laws against, like, it's never blatant. The I don't want to say brilliance about racism is you can't sit there and go, that right there. That's, I mean, you can, but
It's an evolving virus.
yeah, it's an evolving virus, and like you have to. It's a system. I think people have to understand that it's not about hate in your heart. I mean, sometimes it's about hate in your heart, but there is a system in place that is working. That
For some people.
yeah. That is, there's a reason why these folks who went to assess their house, and it was like 400,000 of these black folks, and then they took all evidence of black people out of it, had their white friend do a new assessment of the house, and it was like 700,000. And it went
Yeah.
up 300,000 because all the black stuff, any black pictures were taken out of it. That is a system that is working, that's been in place for a long time. So, yeah, some pictures from the show. Our apartment looked very similar, which is really nice. It was really fun putting the apartment together. And even the wicker chair that is on the cover of my Fear of a Black Marker book was in there. And, it's so funny. When you're on a set, the person that says, don't take any of the props is the person that's taking all the props.
Yeah.
That's what I learned. So, yeah, this is shooting the pilot. Lamorne Morris from New Girl plays me. Blake Anderson plays my roommate Gunther. And look at the cop. Look how serious the guy who's playing the cop is. And I'll tell you, in season 2, everybody had like these white actor friends saying, "Can I play a racist cop? Can I play?" Like they were like super psyched to do it. It was really weird. So I think the breakout star of the show is T-Murph on the right here. And here's the thing, and this is another great thing about The Daily, is like the Daily, doing a daily strip is so much different than doing an autobiographical weekly. The weekly, it's more like a diary, and you can talk blue and do all that stuff because you're an alternative weekly. Whereas the Daily is almost like a sitcom version of it. And so you're returning to these characters every day. So I had to develop characters to return to every day. So Clovis actually came into being because of The Daily. So if it wasn't for The Daily, Clovis wouldn't have existed. We wouldn't have gotten T-Murph, who just really was
Such
the
a fun
breakout star.
character.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
so fun. And and Mo Marable with the glasses, he was the one who said, the animated characters, he said, I don't think you should make them 2D. I don't think we should make them 2D. They should be puppets. They should be like 3D in the world because it'll be much more surreal. And I credit him for like totally elevating it.
That was it. Were they always is it in the pilot were they
Yeah.
they were drawn on, or they were 3D as well?
They were puppets, except Toast and Butter, who was supposed to be shallow, and
Got it.
that they were 2D.
Yeah.
But
The show's great if you haven't watched it.
he came with a lookbook, and what a lookbook is the director says, this is what the things that will influence the look of the show. He came with a lookbook that was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Amelie, Do the Right Thing, and Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy knows
Got it.
what he's doing. Yeah, this guy's got it. Each season I have a secret cameo, and so I was Cubby the Koala in episode 7, and I got to punch my character in the face. And so this is me on that night, and that's my twin sister holding the head up, and that's my younger sister who flew in from Portugal to be there. And you couldn't see anything out of the head. But I remember as I threw the punch, I heard an extra go, "I don't think he's ever thrown a punch in his life." So this was from season 2, and we got to shoot with Isaiah Whitlock Jr., who was in The Wire. And I am a Wire mega fan, like so much so that I like check in on the actors like every 6 months to see how they're doing. So it was an honor to like have him play Clovis's dad.
Oh yeah.
And you know,
That's he.
Yeah. And it was just really fun. He was amazing, and it was just a joy to be a part of it. This was my favorite episode of season 2, which is Ayana, played by Sashir Zamata, goes to trip on mushrooms in a motel, and she conjures up these women from the past. And what the idea was to do a parody of a One Night in Miami, where the 4 historical figures sort of hang out and contemplate everything. And the breakout star is Harriet Tubman's secret girlfriend. It was like just really, really fun, and just a fun episode. This is my second cameo, which I'm a producer of the show. And when I found out that the mime wanted to charge us like $600 to just be in the background, I was like, screw that, I'm gonna be the mime. Yeah. And so the sad thing was, all it took was the gloves and the beret. Like, I already dressed like a low-rent mime. Like, I didn't have to change my clothes, which is really weird. But if you look in it, like, I go like this, like there's like a hint as to what's to come, because Lamorne looks at me and like has this weird look on my face, and I go like that to him, like in the show, in the season. So that's a little secret that gives away what's going to happen.
What's coming next?
Yeah. So
Right.
this is where I became a doctor, which is very exciting. I much to the chagrin of my twin sister, who screams, "I'm the smart one, I'm the smart one." And this is the story. I don't know if I tell this story a lot, which is me and my sister, when we were in 3rd grade, we got asked to be in this program that had the smartest students in the city. And we went to this school called Major Works from 4th to 6th grade. And all we did were puppet shows and like comics and plays. It was amazing. It was great. And so last Thanksgiving, my mom said, you know, you weren't picked for that Major Works program. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, your twin sister was picked. And I told them that you had to go to keep her company. So I was not one of the smartest kids. I was a companion animal for my twin sister. But here's the thing. I thought I was one of the smartest kids. So I went through life like thinking I was smart. And that, you know, it just goes confidence over competence. Because I moved through life like that, I feel like that's why I accomplished what I accomplished. Because clearly I'm not that smart. But you could hear my sister screaming if you watch this video, "I'm the smart one." But yeah, I got the doctorate. So yeah, there's my twin sister on the right side. There's my mom and my younger sister, again, who flew in from Portugal. My younger sister's loaded. So this is the greatest thing. So after I spoke to the freshmen, this young lady walks up to me and says, Dr. Knight. Dr. Knight. I said, yes. She says, you went to school with my mom, and she gave this to me to give to you. And so I had a crush on her mom and her 2 aunts, because this whole family were just amazing, very cute. And I gave them artwork, and I totally don't remember giving them that artwork, but she gave that back. She kept it for 40 years. and gave it back to me, which is incredible. And I said,
the one that we saw up the top.
Yeah, at the
Your
top.
Fat Albert.
yeah. And so I said, are you sure you want to give this back? This could be worth money when they take me out. And she goes, oh, don't worry. She still has some more artwork. So I think that's just a great story. But yeah,
Amazing.
I mean,
well, this is your life.
yeah. I mean, that's. I feel like I'm telling the silly stories that my great uncle told, and just in a hopefully.
Less stab wounds.
yeah, less stab wounds. No, but yeah, just carrying on that tradition.
Amazing.
And, yeah, I hope someday that my kids will too.
Yeah, let's take some questions from the audience.
Q&A.
Stick up a hand and we'll get you a mic, or I'll just repeat the question. Yeah,
Yes.
right in front.
How does it feel emotionally to watch someone play you on TV?
How does it feel emotionally to watch someone play you on television?
Well, I feel like the comic sort of prepared me for that, because the comic is kind of me, but not really me. So I kind of saw this as kind of me, but not really me. And just me, like Lamorne and I would talk, like we are so similar in how, sort of our mindsets and how our experiences, that it really, I think the most surreal thing was probably in the writer's room when everybody was sort of talking about things.
What this character would do.
What this character would do. But also early on, my wife was in the show. And she was a roommate, but it was...
Oh, the character of your wife.
Yeah, the character of my wife.
Got it.
And there were two things. One, I was way too precious with her. Like, oh, no, she wouldn't do, like, you know, like, I was very protective of the character. And two, we felt like he needed to lose everything and then start gaining stuff back.
Yeah.
And so that was the hardest thing, was like coming home and going,
Cutting your wife.
Kirsten, yeah, gotta cut your
Bad
character
news.
out of it. But she, you know, she wasn't that happy about it. But when she saw the season, she was like, oh, wow. Like, she was, I think her expectation was so low that when she saw the show, she was like, oh my God, this is great. You know, like, so it was.
The show will be nothing without me.
And also, so basically, the Rose McIver character we named after her brother, Adrian. So, like, Adrian is Adrian. And we just had trouble finding, my wife's German, and it was hard to find anybody, someone with the comedic caliber of the other guys who was also German. And so when we had people try to do German accents, when you try to do a German accent, it just sounds really bad. So, you know, so we just started auditioning all these different, they just had to be from somewhere else. And well, they had to be white because it was, what we wanted to do was have someone who was white, but not American white, you know?
And so who was the person who filled that role?
Rose McIver.
Which character was that?
Adrian.
Not the white dude.
No, the white girl.
I promise I've watched I've watched the whole.
He goes to the white party, the old white woman's party, and he meets her there.
Yes. Okay.
Black people, and she gives him the idea for Black People for Rent.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and she keeps on taking Clovis's apple. But it was just amazing, sort of, yeah, just creating, because I drop in, if you followed my work for a long time, I drop in like so many references to so many different things. So people who grew up with me in Boston will get jokes that will fly over people's heads. People in San Francisco will get jokes that will fly over people's heads. And people in the comics industry will get jokes that will fly over people's heads. And it was hard to convince sometimes executives, like, I'm not catering to you. I'm like, sometimes it's okay not to get the joke,
If in the writers' room, when people are coming up with like storylines and everything, like, was it a kind of thing where you all came together, came up with the arc, and then each person wrote a episode, or did you have your finger in each, like, every scene?
You got to come up with the arc of the character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the important thing that they want to see is like this person has to go from here to here, and how is that they're going to happen? Then you fill in all that stuff. But yeah, each writer takes a different script, but. I threw out all these different ideas. The Black People for Rent episode was based on I had a poster that Black People for Rent that I hung up around. And it had a phone number on it, a very generic phone number, but it had a voicemail. And literally, the most calls that I got were from Black people looking for jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, which was like, when that first happened, I was like, I don't know what this is, but it's more than a comic, and so I was so psyched to have the opportunity. Although the original Black People for Rent episode is way better than the episode that, and I might put that in comics form or something, but it was,
Well, so here's a question. So for those of you who don't know, season 2 it didn't get picked up for season 3.
Yeah, no.
So for us who are dying to find out what happens next, could like season 3 just be done as a comic?
I was talking to some folks about it at SBX, and I have another graphic novel that I'm finishing but I would love to put that in graphic novel form because some of the ideas are really hilarious, and I don't want to see it fall by the wayside. Like I had a great concept for season 3. They would go to Burning Man, and Keith would get Burning Man like banned from so all the Burning Man people hate him, but it would have been really fun to do. But maybe do it as a graphic novel, and then someone says, let's make a movie. I don't know. But yeah.
It's all like referencing, everything is referencing itself,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it would make sense to do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Let's go on.
What project or book is still out there that you have yet to do, like the last thing on the list, whether it be a Broadway play or any other type of project or medium that you haven't gotten a chance to work in?
Oh, what's the last thing? Oh.
Well, just what's next, or what's the next frontier?
Yeah, I definitely want to do another TV show, and that's something I've been working on the pitch. My management said, like, you have 2 successful seasons under your belt, so you have an open door to any studio. Like, they will listen. This is the only time you'll have an open door. Like, maybe after you pitch, that won't ever happen again. So they just said, make sure you have this pitch that is rock solid. So I just sent the first draft to my director and my original producer to get feedback on it. And it's going to go through probably 3 or 4 drafts before I think it's really solid and ready to go. But I think it's a really funny concept, and have actors in mind with it, and actors that were already in my first show. So it'd be really fun to do.
Cool. Well, let's get to him, and then we'll come over to you. Yeah. Just because the mic's already there.
Cartooning is such a solitary experience. You're sitting in your room drawing. How did it feel to go from that to like working with a whole team of writers and producers and actors?
I loved it. I am the worst person to be a cartoonist, in the sense that I like being around people. Like, I'll draw in cafes. I like going to events like this. Like, it was so nice the first thing I did when I got to Vancouver was walk through the whole place. I walked to the graphic design department. I walked through the where they make the sets. I walked through like every office just to say hello. I walked even through the money guy, who's the like always the guy. There's always a money guy who sits in the back and just says, you know. I said hello to him. You know, to me, it was just such an amazing thing that my modest scribblings employed, you know, hundreds of people. Like that to me is what's amazing, and just to think. And I think the budget. I don't know. I remember my producer saying, "Well, you know, it's like a $27 million budget," and like that's the first time it's like, oh shit, like you know,
This stuff costs money.
yeah. But yeah, it was just that to me. It's like working in a band. Actually, it's like what I loved about being in the band is you have an idea, you bring it, and hopefully the people around you enhance it and make it way better than you ever thought it could be. And that to me is what the show is just like you bring these ideas and they make it so like I always thought I would get something made of my work, but I thought it would be some sleazy outfit in Vegas and they say, oh, we don't have enough money to cover the budget, so we're going to get some overseas funding, so there has to be a lot of nudity in it. And you know, it would wind up in late night, you know, Skinamax or something. And so to think that I would have this amazing director, all these amazing actors, and just like
Animation.
animation and all that stuff, and all the voice actors. I mean, we had Keith David, Wes Studi, Nicole Byer, Eddie Griffin, just all these amazing people. Like I would have been like, yeah, right, sure, you know. So it was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, let's get it again.
Yeah.
Over here? Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about your Michael Jackson phase?
Yeah. So this is the graphic novel that I you know, while we were producing the show, like I hadn't touched it in a long time, but it was this basically a Kickstarter that I did a long time ago. I think 3/4 of the people who donated have passed on. So I'm sorry. No, but I'm working on that now. I was a Michael Jackson impersonator in high school, and you know, I'm basically chronicling my time as a Michael Jackson impersonator in high school, and with the same thing, like the panties story. I was interviewing my twin sister, and she was like, "Yeah," she goes, "like you talked me and then Michael, our neighbor across the street, into wearing suits and wearing sunglasses." And we were your bodyguards when we were going through this department store to do. And I don't remember any of that. But it sounds like me, you know? And so I've just been doing these, you know, I'm basing, each chapter is based on a Michael Jackson song. And so it's been really fun to do. You just put on the music and just draw it. And so that's what I've been working on to finish.
Moonwalk down memory lane.
It has a guide on how to do the moonwalk. So if anything, you will learn how to moonwalk from this graphic novel. So hopefully.
All right. Any other questions? Is your hand up?
Is there anything that you'd like to say to any white creators in the audience that are hoping to share as well as create stories of the Black American experience?
Don't be afraid of feeling awkward, of awkward conversations. Like for too long, you know, we have too many pills that make you feel this or that. Like we need to have the awkward conversations, and we need to tell the stories, and those stories have to be told by the people themselves. So I will guarantee you, if you talk to anybody black over 65 for 10 minutes, have them talk about their lives, you will learn more about black history than you ever learned in your life, in school, in any school. I took the time to speak to all my elders and just recorded them and heard their stories. And so much was explained, you know. And my mom was a sharecropper in Georgia. My mom picked cotton. You know, she got paid pennies a day. Not, you know, it wasn't slavery, but she would get beaten if she didn't pick enough. And those stories need to be told, you know, and they're not. And so that's the type of, there's so much out there that we don't hear about because no one wants to feel awkward, you know. We're banning books. Literally, I just read yesterday, a school whose name of the school is named after this guy, they're banning his book in the school. Like the school that's named after him, they're banning his book because it's supposedly, you know, we don't want to hear anything about racism, you know. So,
And if I can add to that, because the question was for white creators who want to tell stories about black folks. Like, I think that it's, I come across this question myself because I want to, if I want to have female characters, I want to have queer characters, whatever, you know, I feel like the own voices, like we're in the time of own voices. We want to hear from the people who are experiencing them. But race is something that affects all of us. And what I'm not seeing enough of is white people talking about white experiences of not race like the way that you experience race as a white person, but I mean, yes, but also like we need to, it's like black folks are always like, oh, this is happening to us, you know? And I would love to see white people saying like, yes, we are doing this, you know? Because then you can have complex people of color in your, like characters who are people of color in your book, but it's still an own voice because it's like a white dude talking about being a white, or like the character is a white dude, and these are my interactions with these people of color around me. It's so much more interesting than, you know, the long legacy of like Good Times or the Jeffersons, or, you know, and we love these shows, but it's like those are white people's interpretations of a culture that's not theirs. So there might be something there.
yeah, just the point, you know, my wife said, she said, you know, when I met your parents and everybody you grew up with and all this stuff, black people don't talk like black people in the movies. That's what she said. Black people don't talk like that. I said, you know why? I said, because white people are making those decisions to put those images on screen.
And to the degree where sometimes as black people, you forget, like, it's like, I can have this, like, I live in Los Angeles, I'm a tattooer, and most of my clients are black. So I'm tattooing, so I'm interacting with black folks who are just different people all the time. It's not just like my friend group, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, because Los Angeles is so segregated and I don't live near South LA, I don't have a lot of interactions. Like most of my black friends are back east, right? So sometimes even I forget like the stereotypes are easier. Like if I was just to like write a black character, it would be easier to fall into the stereotypes than my own knowledge, you know, because they're so ingrained. We've seen them so many times.
Yeah. The end of the pilot of Woke, where my character gets robbed by the dude that looks like him, or kind of looks like him. You know, the question from the executives, the white executives, were like, why isn't this scarier? Why isn't this mugging scarier? And, you know, the point I was trying to make was like, it's scarier for a black person dealing with the cops who have they can just shoot you and get away with it, you know, than like that was the point, was to make that experience scarier than this guy who's mugging him.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, can he at least have a gun? Can he at least have a gun? And one of the points I wanted to make, one of the points was like, I don't want any black people with guns. I didn't want black people dancing at the beginning for no reason. I didn't want black men dressed as women unless they were trans or like like it wasn't there for just a joke. And I didn't want anybody with guns. And so the compromise was, and you got to compromise, like he had it in his pants, but he never like pulled it out. But like just,
It's funny because when you say that, like, I think of the times that I've been mugged in living in New York City, and the violence that I've seen in my lifetime. And one time I got mugged in New York. I was filming something, and I went like this. I was just filming like a wall, doing like a pan. And like when I went over here, like I caught like a drug dealer, like 2 blocks away. But he came over and he's like, you were pointing your camera at me, whatever. And basically he was just like, give me $20 or I would break your camera, right? And he didn't have a gun or anything, but he was just like, he would definitely break my camera. So I was like, well, I gotta go to the ATM. Like we walked into the grocery store. He followed me. I went and took out the money. He actually asked for $10 because then I got out of 20 and then I broke it. And then I gave him the $10, and then he was like, yo, so let me tell you about this wall. And he like walked me back over to the wall that I was filming and told me the history of like the graffiti and
that's it. That to me is hilarious. Like that is.
Yeah. Meanwhile, when I lived here, I was at I don't know if the Kroger is still there, but there was this Kroger like down walking distance. And we used to call it the Roger because it was just like all the rogues hung out there, And like I was coming out of there, and I hear this white dude is screaming, and then another white guy is like, give me my money, and he has a crowbar, and he's just beating and I'm just like, this is the most violent thing I've ever seen in my life. I've lived in New York my whole life, like, it's crazy. So I mean, it's. But those are not the stereotypes that you would ever see.
Yeah,
and that you would write if you hadn't had those experiences.
Yeah, that to me is what I'd want to see.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if the executive was, well, does he have a gun? Can he put it to his head? Can he like be more menacing? It's just like, it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's just a very interesting thing.
So good question.
Yeah, great question. Any more questions?
I don't know how long we're supposed to be going for.
Yeah, we got stuff out. We got books,
There's a signing
and prints
outside.
and stuff. So if you want to come out and we'll do a signing and
Shoot the shit.
yeah, thank you for coming out. Good stuff. Yeah.